Today we're back with another fun one, which is this foliage growth effect using the new motion design mode in Unreal Engine 5.4. I'll go over how to have multiple cloners, how to blend different effectors together, how to get your shrubs and stuff to all look right. I'll also have a few extra tips for animation as well as adding variation to the clones. And I just want to give a shout out to all the other tutorials out there in Cinema 4D and Blender and Houdini that have this effect. It's just so cool to be able to do a bit more of a basic version Unreal, but I'm sure we'll eventually get to that level one day. And before people get mad at me, I know this was possible before with Niagara, but it's just a lot more fun to use with the new motion design tools. Let's jump in. I don't know why I'm speaking in that cadence. Design tools. Anyway, that should be good. Okay, so this is my pretty much empty scene in Unreal Engine 5.4.0. Again, this is like the early development build from GitHub. I've just got a studio background with like a super tiny light set up there. First thing we'll want to do is download our tree bark asset from Quixel Bridge. So once you have your bridge open, you can just type in bark and scroll down a bit. Where is it? This guy. So broken tree bark is the model that I chose to use for this, and I've just downloaded it at a high quality, and then you can just add it to your project. Once you've downloaded it, just drag it into your scene, and then you should have this guy. And as you can see, it comes in super small. I just have this tiny light set up here. Let me move my bark over. And because it's quite small and it kind of looks weird with the foliage at different sizes, I'm just gonna scale it up to 3. And that should work. It's still actually quite small in real world scale units, but this should be fine for this setup. Now the next asset we need to download is some of the grass. I think it's like the lily something. Let me see. Lily of the valley. So if we open up our bridge again, just type in lily valley. And it should pop up. Yeah, this guy here. So Lily of the Valley. I've downloaded a high quality. You probably don't need to, but because this was the main thicker asset that I clone onto the tree bark, I've decided to do the high quality one. Actually, that's a lie. I've used medium quality, so feel free to use the medium quality if you want. Now I'm just going to drag these in from the content browser. I think I'm just going to use these 3 for now. Maybe this guy as well. Actually, no, I'll just use the thicker bunches for now. So just drag them into the scene. As you can see, they are huge, or actually the tree bark is small, but for now, I'm just going to scale them down to a 0.3 should work, maybe a 0.15. That should be fine for now. Cool, and I'm just gonna spread them out a bit. So these should be the 3 different assets you have in your viewport. Also, quick note, this studio background I'm using was actually made using the modeling tools in Unreal. So I think I have a video out about that, or I'm about to release one on it. So just if you do want to learn how to model it in Unreal using the updated and new and improved beveling tools, check out my video on that. Now the next thing we need to set up is our cloner and then our effector. So I'm just gonna hit start on this motion design mode, and I'm actually gonna change back to default viewport because I'm just not a huge fan of the motion design viewport. And if you're wondering how I just zoomed into my object there, you can just select whatever you want to focus on in the scene and then hit F, and that'll zoom to that object in the viewport. So the first thing we'll want to get is go to actor and then click on our cloner actor and then click anywhere in the scene, and that should make our cloner. And then we also want an effector actor. So click that and then also click somewhere on the scene. Now I'm just gonna go back to my selection mode and then also drag my cloner. Actually, I'll just zero out the cloner coordinates. And you can see here, this is the default coordinates. I mean, the default cloner with the default cube. I don't know why I'm saying default so many times. So let's just delete the cube and then hit yes. And then grab our Lily of the Valley assets and then drag that onto the cloner. And you'll see it has a red cross sign on it. And the reason for that is because we need to make our Lily of the Valley assets movable. So a cloner can only clone movable objects, not static. So drag that onto cloner. And now you'll see these are our little Lily of the Valley why does my Lily of the Valley assets being cloned on a grid? Another thing you'll notice is the material breaks, like it goes gray, and that seems to only be happening to me with foliage materials, and sometimes it does work, but as soon as I hit render in Movie Render Queue, it'll go back to gray. So for this example, I'm actually just going to replace the top material with just a generic green material. And you'll notice it hasn't updated yet, so sometimes you just got to turn the cloner on and off and that'll update it, or you hit force update cloner and then you'll see there it'll update the material. So I'm just going to give it a generic green. It really is just a green base color with a roughness of 0.3, nothing too special. All right, cool. So now we have our foliage assets in our cloner, and let's just rename this to cloner_Lily. Now the next thing we'll need to do is clone it onto our mesh. So first let me save all because we could crash. And if we just select our cloner here and then go to the details panel, let's change our layout name. I don't know why it's called this, but this is the way it clones things. Let's change it from grid to mesh. And then we will just need to grab this eyedropper and then pick our broken bark. And now you'll see we have our lilies cloning onto the bark. So let me also just move our bark a little more into the light. If I can grab the gizmo. So now we've got our lilies cloning onto the bark, but you'll notice the rotation is off. Like it's following the rotation of the bark and not actually facing the normal of the bark. Again, I'm not sure why I explain it like that. Pretty much what we need to do is rotate our lilies to be facing outwards. And that is why I initially got this first effector, because currently there is no way that I know of at least to rotate each of the clones individually within the cloner like maybe you would do in Cinema 4D. So to change the rotation values, we're just going to use this effector. So I'm just going to call it effector_base rotation, and then actually go to the front effector_lily. Actually, no, we can just leave it at base rotation because we can also use that for our next foliage assets that we'll use. So first, let's check our cloner. Go to the plus in the effectors, and then let's add our new effector, which is effector_base rotation. You can ignore these other guys. I've just archived them in another folder. So that's this guy that we've just added. And now if we scroll down here to rotation, we can now affect the rotation of our... Why is it not working? Oh, I know why it's not working. I've left the type on sphere instead of unbound. So right now it's only working within this sphere. What we want to do is change it from sphere to unbound so it covers our entire scene. And now if I make this Y value -90, yeah, okay. So -90 in the Y value of the rotation should work correctly. As you can see here, it is popping out. And I'm actually going to make our clones a little smaller as well, maybe 0.1. Yeah, that should be good. And let's hit save on that. Now let's up the cloner count. So I'll start off with 500 and that does cover it. But if we want like a proper thick one, let's try 5,000, maybe 7,500. And that should cover it pretty nicely. And it actually is already looking decent and not too repetitive. However, to break it up a little bit, the good thing we can do is go into our clone and then scroll down, and in this range tool, we can just enable it. And here we can now add a minimum and maximum value of our rotation and our scale. So let's randomize the scale a little bit first. So let's go from 1 to 1.5. No, that's a bit too much, 1.2. And then let me just add 60, 60, and 60 in the rotation just to get a bit of random rotation in there. And that should help break up the repetitive nature of our foliage. Also nature, quite a good pun. All right, what's next on the list? Okay, yeah, nice. So that's pretty much our basic cloner setup. And one next kind of last thing for this part is this red or orangey bark material kind of pops a little too much in the background for me or for my liking. So I'm just going to go into the bark material, go to the albedo controls and just desaturate it to like a 0.5, maybe a 0.75. Yeah, that seems a lot better. So we're going from super orange to a little less orange. And yeah, that's pretty much our first initial basic cloner setup. Now let's start adding in our effector. And by effector, I mean the animated effector. I know we've already got one effector. Let's just move on. Okay, so for our animated effector, let's go back into our motion design mode and go down to actors, effector actor, and then let's just add another one and go back to selection mode, find that effector we just made and like zero out the coordinates. Cool, so this is that effector we just made. Let's make this a plane effector, and what that is if you have used Cinema 4D before, let me scale them down to 0.2 or something. This is that plane effector where we have two sides of a spline. It's pretty much a linear effector. That's what it is. Is it? Let me double check. I should know this. Okay, so I've just double checked. This is pretty much like a linear field effector from Cinema 4D. So you'll see in a second what that means. Let me just also reduce the visualizer thickness to a 0.2, just make it thinner, and maybe make this a 0.1. Now I'm just gonna rotate this guy 90 degrees. Cool. So just to show you what this does, let's first go to our cloner and add that as an effector. And of course, let's name it. So effector underscore plane underscore anim. So animated effector. I don't know why it's gone up in size. Okay, cool. Back to our cloner. Let's add our plane anim. And obviously nothing will happen yet because we haven't told it to do anything. And now if we go into our plane effector and change the scale from 1 to 0, you'll just see wherever this plane effector is, it sort of controls the scale of our cloners that it is on. So very cool, super responsive as well. And now another thing we can do is go into our plane effector and also change the plane spacing from 200 to maybe something like 500. So it's a bit of a smoother fall off, maybe 600. And now you'll see we get more of like a smoother fall off and things kind of grow a bit more gradually. Again, you can go back down to 50 or something and it's like a lot more contrasty. I think I like somewhere around a 450, there we go. Cool. Now the next thing we want to do is actually animate this in sequencer. So let me just save all. Now I'm just going to go to my sequencer window here. If it's not open for you already, just go to Window, Cinematics, and Sequencer. Now this is my old sequence, so I'm just going to create a new one, Add, and then a Foliage, Growth, Tutorial. Nice. And let me get my plane effector, wherever it is. Why is it resetting its size all the time whenever I save? That's a weird bug. Let me rotate it the other way. So I want to go from right to left. So let me just move in here. And in my timeline, I'm just going to change the FPS from 60 to 30. And then go to frame 600, so 20 seconds. Press the right square bracket to set your out point. And then just hit save. And now I'm just going to drag in my plane effector into the track timeline area. And now at the start, I'm just going to click this little plus button on our plane effector. And then I'll add a transform track. And then we can add a keyframe at the current place. Actually, let me start it a little more to the left till it's all gone. Maybe somewhere there. And then override that. And then let's go to maybe frame, I guess we can just go to 20 seconds all the way to the end. Drag our guy all the way here, about there. And then add another keyframe. And now we've got the basics. I just went to game view there. We've got the basics of our growth effect. So really cool, super smooth. And now this is where you can start adding cameras and stuff to it. It's a little slow for me. Let me try to make this like 12 seconds. Yeah, this is a bit nicer. And you can see our growth happening super nicely and organically. I feel like the growth movement is a bit too linear. So as in the way the clones scale up. So what we can do is go to our plane effector again and then change the easing from linear to, let's try cubic. And now if we hit play, you can see the way they grow, they kind of slow down a bit and taper towards the end, but they speed up in the middle. So I just really like the way that sort of looks, but definitely try out all of these and see which one fits you the best. And then while you're in your sequencer, this is where you could add your camera. So Cine Camera 3, and now, you know, start setting up some nice shots, something like that, and just sort of build out your whole cinematic. Okay, now let's start adding the extra layers of foliage. Now let's start adding the extra shrubs and bits of foliage. So open up your Quixel bridge, go to 3D plants, and then grass, and then wild. And I don't think it was that one. It was one of these guys. Oh yeah, it was this one, wild grass. So that's one of the assets that I use. So you can download that and add it to your project. And then I also added, I know it had the word spindle in it. This guy, yeah, European spindle. So those are the two extra shrub assets that I added. So once you've dragged in your extra shrubs into the viewport, I've just chosen these three and then a few of these guys. I don't know why it's changing its LOD. Oh, I know why. It's just changing its LOD because these aren't instance, these are actually in the scene. But once we drag them into the cloner, they should change into instance foliage, I hope, because that's why this guy's in there. Also, one thing to note with these guys is I have changed their scale to, again, like 0.1, and then I changed the European spindle to 0.08. So I've also had to scale them down a bunch. And also, sorry, another thing to note is I've given them just some basic other green materials on them as well, because they also turn gray once I put them in a cloner. So I've just given them slightly different hues of greens, yellowy green materials, just so they show up in the final render. Now, the great thing about this cloner setup, or at least this motion design mode, is luckily we can just select our lily, our original, and then just hit Control D to duplicate. Now, you might want to actually disable the cloner first before doing that, because it'll just clone and copy all those lilies again onto your bark. So maybe just disable it first and then hit Control D on it to duplicate. And we can just delete these guys and then drag in our new shrubs. So I'm just going to do the European spindles first, and then also rename this to cloner_spindle. And I'm also going to delete or disable our lily cloner. Now, it's not showing up at the moment, but if we enable it, yeah, there we go. That should show up. And if it doesn't, again, just force update cloner or turn it on and off. Now, I don't want these many European spindles, so let me just reduce the clone amount to maybe 250. Yeah, that should be good. That should be good. And then let me also just turn on our lilies again. And maybe I actually want the size of these to be a bit bigger for them to stand out. Or what I'll do is reduce the size of my lilies to, let's say, 0.05. Yeah, that looks a little better scale-wise. And then we'll just up the cloner amount. Let's try 15,000, 20,000. 25,000, that should be good. And then maybe change the seed just so we fill up those gaps a bit. Yeah, there we go. Let me try 30,000. Yeah, okay, cool. So I like the size of our lilies. Now our shrubs, maybe there's a little too many of the spindles, so I'm gonna just turn that down to 150 maybe. And I also think they're a little too big at the moment. So instead of 1 to 1.2, I might try 0.5 to 1, or maybe 0.5 to 1.5. No, 1.2, 0.8 to 1.2. Just keep playing around with the values until you like what you're seeing. That should be pretty good for me. And then I also think I'll, again, reduce the cloner amount to 75 maybe. And then let me just find a seed that I like. That should be good. like a 4. Yeah, we've got a few sticking out the bottom. We have a few clumps here, and I'm liking the look of this guy. Also, if you're wondering how I'm going in and out of game mode, I'm just hitting G on the keyboard. Cool, so I'm just gonna save all. Now let's do the exact same thing for our grass. So again, I'm just gonna disable my spindle, Control D. Oh my foot just nearly cramped. Control D, rename it to wild grass. Delete our duplicated spindles, and then let's just grab all our grass and drag it onto this guy, and then hit enable. And then update. Let me turn off my lilies. Okay, so they are there. They are there. The rotation is just off. Let's just try adding in our effectors again, because sometimes it doesn't apply to the clones we've just placed. So I'm just gonna delete. Oh, I've just added it. I've just deleted it off the wrong thing. Okay, let's delete our effectors and then add them in again. So plus base rotation. There we go. Okay, so sometimes you just got to re-add your effector for it to work. And now let me up the clone count to maybe a 150. And then let's turn on our lilies. I do like the little hits we're getting here from the shrubs. Let's turn on our spindles as well. Yeah, I don't mind it. Maybe it needs to be a little more visible. So let's just change the range. Drag this up. Change the range to 1 and 1.5. Yeah, there we go. Now we're getting like these nice little thin threads popping out from our tree bark. And then again, I might up the clones a little bit, 200. Yeah, nice. And let's just play with the seed a bit. Yeah, cool. We're getting like these little strands that are picking up specular highlights, and I kind of really am digging this distribution. Yeah, this is good. Let me just check that all our cloners have the correct effectors. So our wild grass, we just need to add that in again. So the plain anim, the spindle has it, and the lilies have it. Cool. So I'm just going to quickly save all again, go back to our sequencer, and you'll see the plane effector now works on all of our clones. So let me just hit play. Let me move in here, and you can see all our clones growing and taking over this tree bark. So a really cool effect, something that we haven't really been able to do this easily in Unreal before. So super fun to play around with. So the first thing that could be useful, maybe some of you might not know, is say you wanted to rotate this branch or this tree bark, but not mess up the movement of the plane effector. What we can do is go up to this plus menu up here. Oh no, I forgot that crashes things. I'll be right back. I swear I crash in every tutorial now. Okay, so the first thing you can do is go up to this plus menu, hopefully you don't crash, and then go to basic and then actor, and then just drag an actor into the scene. So it should look like this guy. And what you can do is drag in your broken tree bark and the effector, the plane effector, and then just drag them onto the actor 2. And I realized I just got to make my tree bark movable to do this, and then grab these two guys, drag them onto actor 2. And now what you can do is use this actor 2 as a parent to rotate and animate things. So if I go to the beginning here, drag my actor 2 into sequencer, add a transform track, and then just keyframe from here, and then go to 20 seconds, and then keyframe there, and then add a keyframe, boom. Now you can see our plane effector and tree bark move at the same, in the same axes, because it's all relative. So this is pretty much the exact same thing as adding a empty null in Cinema 4D and then having children in that null and then animating that null to drive your animations. So that way you don't mess anything up. You don't need to worry about weird location and rotation values, and you've got like a nice cool animation happening here, just like that. Now let's also say you don't want the foliage to fully fill up the bark. You can just go to your motion design mode, actors, effector actor, and then just drag that in. Where is he? Effector 2. So this guy. Go back to selection mode. Let me scale him down to a 0.2 maybe. Drag him here. And then let's just change the scale from 1 to 0. And then just call it effector scale 0. And then select our 3 cloners. So that's a cool thing you can do, is select all 3 and then add another effector array. And then in that, just do effector scale 0. And now you can paint in where you want your blank or empty spots to be, and you get this nice fall off, and then you can play with that, and now you can kind of just art direct where you would want these guys to be. So I'm just copy another one, go back to our cloners, and then add another one, this guy, boom. And now you'll see when it's animated, because of the order of our effectors, it'll skip those parts. You could also make these noise maps as well. So mode noise field. But then it does like weird things with scale and stuff. I think it could still be bugged. I'm not completely sure. Sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. But I kind of like doing it this way, and then we can kind of pick and choose where you want stuff to be. Whoa, that was a weird... What's going on there? Can we just update? Yeah, okay, so if we update our cloners, that fixes it, luckily. Hopefully that was fun and useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any other ideas that you want me to try out, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.